The desert was silent, too silent. Corporal Hayes gripped his rifle, scanning the empty horizon, his earpiece hissing with dead air, where his unit's voices should have been. Then it came, a low, unnatural hum rolling across the dunes, vibrating in his chest like thunder trapped underground. He whispered for backup. No answer. Only the hum, growing louder, closer, and not human. Corporal Hayes had been on patrols like this 100 times, yet something about this one gnawed at him. The briefing had been brisk, clinical, just another nighttime sweep through a sector the brass claimed was quiet. But even as the lieutenant laid out the route, Hayes caught the tension in his voice, the way his hand lingered on the map a second too long. The desert air was a suffocating wall of heat, still clinging to the sand even after sunset. Boots sank into the powdery ground with muffled crunches, and every breath tasted like dust. The moon hung low and pale, throwing long, sharp-edged shadows across the dunes. Hayes and his 5-man unit moved in formation, rifles at the ready, their silhouettes breaking against an endless horizon. Intel had reported abandoned villages, settlements emptied overnight without explanation. The locals called the region cursed, a place where even goats refused to graze. Hayes didn't believe in curses, but he'd learned to respect the instincts of those who lived where maps had no names. As they advanced deeper into the sector, the radio crackled, not with words but with faint bursts of static, like someone whispering through a broken line. The lieutenant ordered everyone to stay sharp, but nobody spoke. There was nothing to shoot at, nothing to see, and that was worse than walking into a firefight. By midnight, the air had cooled, but the silence had only grown heavier. They passed an overturned truck, burned black, its frame twisted as if crushed by impossible weight. No sign of battle, no footprints leading away. Just wrong. Hayes glanced down at the sand and froze. There were tracks, deep, circular impressions, leading in a perfect line across the dunes. Not from boots, not from any vehicle he'd ever seen. The marks glowed faintly in the moonlight, as if the ground itself had been scorched. He opened his mouth to call it in, but the lieutenant shot him a look. Sharp, warning, almost afraid. "Keep moving," he muttered. "Eyes forward. We're not stopping here." The further they pushed into the sector, the more the desert felt wrong. Not hostile in the usual way, but hollow, as if life itself had withdrawn. Clay houses sat crumbling under the moonlight, doors swinging open on rusted hinges. No dogs barked. No wind stirred. Even the flies had abandoned the place. Hayes adjusted his headset, trying to raise command. All he got was static, long, drawn-out bursts of it, broken by something faint and rhythmic, like breathing through the wires. Ramirez's walking point cursed under his breath when his NVGs fuzzed out completely, the green world blinking to black before snapping back again. They found signs of movement, but not human. A cooking fire still smoldered in one hut, but no footprints surrounded it. A plastic canteen lay in the dust, its surface melted and warped like wax under a flame. The lieutenant called for a halt, whispering into his mic, but the words came back garbled, delayed by half a second, like an echo not quite in sync. Hayes could feel the unease spreading through the squad. Their training kept their formation tight, but the discipline was starting to fray. Eyes darted to shadows, fingers rested just a little tighter on triggers. Then came the lights. Faint pinpricks along the ridgeline. Not flashlights, not fire. More like dull embers floating against the night. They hovered for a moment, then winked out as if swallowed whole. Ramirez swore he saw movement, a figure slipping between ruined walls. But when they cleared the building, there was nothing inside. Just peeling paint, cracked tiles, and a smell like ozone after lightning. At the village edge, Hayes spotted it, smeared along the wall at waist height, glistening dark under moonlight. Blood, thick, drying in uneven streaks, leading into a narrow alley that cut deeper into the settlement. The lieutenant raised his fist to halt the unit. Nobody spoke. Nobody wanted to. Even the air felt like it was holding its breath. The village ended in a stretch of open dunes, the sand rolling out in pale silver waves under the moon. The squad moved cautiously, scanning every shadow, but it wasn't the enemy that broke them, it was the silence. The desert was supposed to breathe, to shift with wind, to hum with insects. Instead, the air hung still, as if the world itself was holding back. Hayes noticed first that Mason had fallen behind. He turned to call out, and froze. Mason was there, one heartbeat, his silhouette etched against the ridge. The next he was gone. No sound, no flash. Just gone. "Where is he?" Ramirez whispered, eyes darting. They fanned out, weapons raised, searching for tracks, drag marks, anything. But the sand lay smooth, unbroken. It was as if the desert had swallowed him whole. The lieutenant hissed at them to close ranks, voice tight, but Hayes caught the tremor in his tone. As they pressed on, the terrain itself seemed to twist. Clouds gathered where moments earlier the sky had been clear, blotting the moon in seconds. The temperature dropped, sharp and biting, as if winter had bled into the desert night. Time slipped strangely. The light dimmed too fast, shadows stretched too long, and the horizon rippled like heat mirage, though the air was cold. Then came the sounds, not close, not distant, just there. Footsteps that didn't belong to them, circling but never visible. A low scraping, like stone dragged across stone. Hayes pressed a hand against his ear, trying the radio again. "Command, this is Bravo Patrol. We have a man missing. Repeat, a man missing. Request immediate." Static erupted, violent and sharp, cutting his words apart. He strained against the noise until, for a brief second, he swore he heard Mason's voice. Faint, broken, crying out for help. Then it was gone. Only static remained. The alley funneled them into a dead-end courtyard, hemmed in by mud brick walls crumbling under moonlight. Hayes felt the stillness pressing against his eardrums, the kind that makes you swear you can hear your own heartbeat. Then the silence broke. Not with sound, but with absence. Every faint desert hum, every rustle of night air. Gone, like the world had been muted. Something shifted in the darkness. A shadow peeled itself from the wall, too tall, too narrow, moving with an unnatural grace. Hayes brought his rifle up just as Ramirez opened fire, the muzzle flash strobing the courtyard. The round sparked against stone, but nothing fell. The shape slipped through the light like smoke. "Contact front!" the lieutenant barked, trying to keep order as panic surged. Two more figures appeared at the mouth of the alley. Or maybe it was one, splitting into two. Hayes couldn't tell. Bullets tore into plaster, ricocheting with sharp metallic shrieks. Somewhere to his left, Piercy screamed, a short, sharp sound, then cut off mid-breath. The squad pulled back toward the village edge, firing in controlled bursts, but there was nothing to aim at. Movement came from everywhere and nowhere at once. Long shadows curling against the sand, darting shapes that dissolved when hit. Hayes felt a cold sweat on his spine, even in the desert heat. His earpiece erupted with garbled voices. Not English, not any language he knew, chanting in short, broken syllables that made his teeth ache. "Stay tight! Eyes on your sectors!" the lieutenant barked, his voice cracking under the strain. But the formation had already dissolved. The shapes withdrew as suddenly as they'd come, slipping behind the ruined walls and vanishing into silence. The only sound now was Hayes' own ragged breathing. He turned, scanning for Ramirez, and caught him standing rigid, rifle trembling. Ramirez's lips barely moved as he whispered into the mic, voice raw with terror. "We're not alone out here." Static swallowed the words whole. They regrouped in the ruins of an old watchtower, the last high ground before the desert opened up again. Hayes' hands shook as he thumbed his radio to full power, calling for evac, for drones, for anything. The reply was colder than the night air. Negative. You're outside operational boundaries. No friendly support available. "Outside boundaries?" Ramirez hissed. "We're standing right on the damn grid square." The lieutenant tried again, switching frequencies, but each time the same voice came back, calm, distant, repeating the denial as if reading from a script. It didn't even sound human anymore, just flat syllables stripped of emotion. Arguments broke out in harsh whispers. Pierce wanted to push forward to higher ground, claimed they'd completed the sweep and get the hell out. Ramirez swore something was hurting them, pushing them deeper in. Hayes just wanted a direction, any direction that led out. Then the desert itself seemed to turn against them. The stars wheeled too fast overhead, and dunes shifted where they shouldn't. Landmarks they'd passed an hour ago appeared again, as if they were marching in circles. The compass needles spun lazy arcs, refusing to settle. By dawn, the squad was exhausted and fraying at the edges. No one trusted the maps anymore. They moved by instinct, hoping to stumble back into known territory. That's when it happened. One moment, Corporal Mason was trudging 10 feet ahead, muttering about water. The next, he was gone. No gunshot, no cry, no struggle. Just gone. "I saw him," Hayes said, voice thin. "I saw him standing right there." Then nothing. The lieutenant scanned the dunes, jaw tight, knuckles white on his rifle. There were no footprints leading away, no sign of a fight. Just a single deep impression in the sand, perfectly round, as if Mason had been pulled straight down. By nightfall, only 4 of them remained. Their canteens were nearly empty, ammo belts stripped down to the last magazines. Hayes could feel every grain of sand grinding in his teeth, every drop of sweat tracing icy lines down his back, despite the desert heat. The silence wasn't silence anymore. It had weight, pressing against their eardrums like deep water. They dug into the lee of a dune, building a shallow perimeter with loose sandbags and the shattered husks of clay bricks scavenged from the ruins. No one spoke except in clipped whispers. Even the lieutenant's voice was frayed now, the hard edges gone, replaced by the ragged tone of a man running out of plans. Every few minutes, Hayes swore he heard something moving. Not footsteps, not vehicles, just sand shifting under something heavy that never showed itself. Once a shape rippled across the crest of a nearby dune, a long, thin silhouette against the stars. But when Ramirez sighted it in his scope, there was nothing there. The night stretched thin and brittle, minutes dragging like hours. Hearts thumped loud enough to feel in their throats. The cold desert wind rattled through their gear with a dry hiss that sounded far too much like breathing. Then came the whispering, not from radios this time, from the dark itself. Faint syllables scraped out of the air, circling their dugout, always just beyond the muzzle flash's reach. "Eyes up," the lieutenant muttered, though his own were glassy with fear. "We hold here till dawn." Hayes knew dawn would never come for them. He crouched behind the sandbags, cradling the radio handset, thumbing the emergency frequency. His voice cracked as he spoke, barely louder than the wind. "If anyone finds this," he said, breath ragged, eyes darting toward the shifting horizon, "run. Don't come looking for us. Just run." The words hissed into static. A long, heavy silence followed, and then from somewhere beyond the dune, something answered back. Not a voice, not exactly, but a low vibration that felt alive. They found them 3 days later, or rather what was left. A quick reaction team swept into the sector after command finally admitted it had lost contact with Hayes' patrol. The desert wind had erased most signs of the fight, but the dune where they dug in was still stained dark. The sand fused into glassy clumps as if scorched from below. Only one man was alive. Ramirez, dehydrated, delirious, clutching an empty rifle like it might still save him. His words came out in fragments. Circling, whispering, shadows in the sand. Mason just gone. The medics assumed heat stroke. The brass didn't. Back at base, Hayes' final transmission played on loop for the investigators. His voice was barely audible through the static, but the last 3 words cut clean through. "If anyone finds this, run." When the recording ended, something else bled through the channel. Not speech, more like a low hum reverberating in frequencies human ears weren't meant to hear. The audio text swore the waveform wasn't natural. Officially, the mission was filed as compromised by navigational error. Maps of the area were quietly redrawn, removing entire villages from record. The surviving files were sealed under a classification level so high even the recovery team couldn't access them later. Still, rumors leaked. A supply convoy reported strange interference passing through the same sector weeks later. Compasses dead, radios hissing with that same rhythmic breathing. And in satellite images, Analysts noted something unsettling. The dunes had shifted into patterns that didn't look like wind at all, as if something massive had moved beneath the surface. When Ramirez was discharged, he vanished from public life, refusing all interviews. Those who served with him say he still wakes screaming, swearing he feels the ground vibrate before it happens. And now coordinates once scrubbed from every map have started to reappear on encrypted channels. Someone, or something, wants that place remembered. The desert keeps its secrets, but not forever. Whatever happened on that patrol defies a simple explanation. Some insist it was psychological warfare, an enemy using sound, light, and fear as weapons. Others whisper about covert experiments, a no-man's land where the rules of physics bend under classified technology. And then there are those who believe something older than war itself sleeps beneath those dunes, disturbed by boots and engines it cannot understand. But strip away the theories, and one truth remains. Soldiers walked into the unknown and did not turn away, even when every instinct told them to run. Courage isn't the absence of fear. It's moving forward when fear claws at your throat. Hayes, Ramirez, Mason. They didn't volunteer for legend. They were sent on a mission, and they held their ground against forces far beyond human comprehension. The real tragedy is not just what they faced, but how quickly the world turned the page. Classified files, altered maps, redacted reports. Silence is a weapon wielded by those who never had to hear the whispers in the dark. In the end, war is not always fought against flesh and blood. Sometimes it's fought against the things we're not allowed to name. And in that fight, even the bravest can disappear without a trace. Out there in the dunes, something happened no report can fully explain. Was it an enemy using tactics we've never seen before? A secret experiment buried under layers of classification? Or something far older, moving beneath the sand, waiting for anyone who dares to cross its path? What do you think really happened to Hayes and his patrol that night? Was it fear twisting perception? Or proof that some battlefields hold more than human enemies? Share your thoughts below. Not just theories, but what this story means to you. In the end, it's not just about what they found, but why no one wants us to know.